So it's here.
Can you get to that? I mean, would you do it?
But anyway. All right, folks, we'll call to order the February 24th Board of Finance meeting. First order is,
Yes, I nominate Conor Duffy to fill a seat in the vacancy of Sean Deary.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Hello, Sean. Never met him before. But anyway, public participation is number 2. The approval of the minutes of January 27th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just wanted to note that there was a problem with the reason the minutes are the way they are is because the tape at the last meeting, we have it on video, but you can't take, I guess it would take an act of a lot of time and effort to take it off of that.
It's not loaded up yet.
And
so
it's
I
not
can't.
loaded, and these are the best we're going to get because the machine that she has in her hand was not working right at the time. So
Make a motion, we move item 7A up above item 4.
Second.
there, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, young man. Don't hurt yourself carrying all these things.
All right, my name is Mike Van I'm a senior manager at Mahoney Sable, and you should have in front of you.
Lots of them.
What's that?
I said
Four
lots of
things. A presentation that I will be going through tonight that will cover all of our required auditor communications and some highlights with respect to the audit. The actual financial statements themselves is the thicker document. There's a federal and state single audit report, and then a communication of internal control related matters. All right. Before I start the actual presentation, I do want to make mention of the passing of our dear friend and colleague Rob Howard. He was the audit partner on the town's audit in the prior years, and he passed away unexpectedly in October. At that time, we did send out some correspondence to our clients, which kind of outlined our transition plan. I've included that correspondence as an attachment within the presentation, so you can feel free to kind of read through that at your convenience. John Bauer, who was initially the concurrent partner on the engagement, stepped into the partner role. He's unable to be here this evening. He had conflict with meetings, so he took one meeting and I took this meeting. Certainly, if there's any questions that I can't answer, I will follow up with him and get back to you. All right. Okay, so I'd like to turn your attention towards the actual presentation. And if you can jump to slide 1. As far as the agenda, I'll go through the scope of work, the reports that were issued, provide some financial highlights, make our required communications. We do have some internal control matters, provide some technical updates, and then certainly to the extent you have any questions, I'd actually be happy to answer those as we go along. All right? As far as the scope of work, we did perform an audit of the town's financial statements. We performed that audit in accordance with the auditing standards issued by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, as well as government auditing standards issued by the Government Accountability Office. We're required to plan our audit to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. So again, it is a reasonable assurance. It's a high-level assurance, but it is not absolute assurance. Okay, so I just want to make sure you understand that. In addition to the audit of the financial statements, we did also perform a federal and state single audit. We performed the federal audit in accordance with OMB Circular A133 and the state single audit in accordance with the State of Connecticut Single Audit Act. Any questions as far as the scope of work? All right, on the next slide, the reports that were issued, and we do issue a number of reports. The first report is the report on the financial statements. We did issue an unmodified clean opinion on the financial statements. Our opinion covers the governmental activities, the business type activities, the major governmental funds of the town, which were the general fund, the ash landfill fund, and the educational grants fund. the major business type funds, which was the water fund and the sewer fund, and then all the other information of the town is combined in what we call an aggregate remaining fund information, and we do express an opinion on that as well. Any questions on the opinion on the financial statements?
I'll address it over here.
Okay. Whenever we perform an audit in accordance with government auditing standards, we're required to issue a report on compliance and on internal control over financial reporting. Here we're required to report any material non-compliance of laws and regulations that we identify. We did not identify any material non-compliance with laws and regulations. Also, we're required to report any material weaknesses in internal control. We did report a material weakness in internal control over financial reporting this year, and I will go through that in more detail in the internal control related matters section. Okay. With respect to the federal single audit, we do issue a report on compliance and on internal control at the federal award level. Again, our opinion here is specific to the major programs that we tested. For the town, the federal major programs were the water and waste disposal systems, which the town had received about $3.5 million, and the child nutrition grant cluster, which is about $600,000. So you can see the total federal awards was $5.1 million, and we tested a significant portion of that. The results of our procedures resulted in an unmodified clean opinion on compliance, and we did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses with respect to your internal control over compliance for those programs. Okay? On the state single audit side, the town's major programs were the priority school districts, the school readiness and child daycare program, and the Alliance grant. Again, you can get an idea of the total amount of state financial assistance, which was $11.8 million, and the amount that we actually tested. A good portion of the state grants are actually exempt. They're exempt from testing. And again, we issued an unmodified clean opinion on compliance, and we did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses over compliance with those programs. All right, so from a grant perspective, as far as the programs that we tested, it was very clean. Okay. All right, moving on to the financial highlights. The town did implement 2 new accounting standards this year, GASB statement number 63 and 65. It was really just a change in presentation. Net assets was replaced by the term net position, and it also created 2 new elements of the balance sheet called deferred inflow of resources and deferred outflow of resources. So it really didn't have a material impact on your numbers. It was more presentation related. Next slide goes over the government-wide financial highlights. The government-wide financial statements include all the town's funds, all the financial information on a full accrual basis. So this includes all of your capital assets, your infrastructure, and any related debt. And as of the end of the year, the town's assets exceeded its liabilities by approximately $50.8 million, of which $41.4 million represents your investment in capital assets, net of any related debt. The remaining portion is what we consider to be unrestricted, and that totaled $8.6 million. Of this amount, $6 million represented unrestricted net position of the governmental activities, and $2.6 million represented the unrestricted portion of the business type activities. So again, things that you're looking for here is if you have an unrestricted deficit. So again, certainly from the town's perspective, nothing to be concerned with. The governmental net position increased by $57,000 over the prior year, and the business type activities net position increased by $3.8 million. And the majority of that $3.8 million increase is due to capital contributions under the federal grant for the sewer upgrade. Next slide goes over the governmental funds financial highlights. As of the end of the year, the town's combined ending fund balances were $9.9 million, which was an increase of $1.3 million over the prior year. You can see I broke it out. The general fund had a ending fund balance of $3.5 million. The Ash Landfill Fund had a ending fund balance of $4.3 million, and all the other towns' funds combined had an ending fund balance of $2.1 million. One of the measurements that is typically looked at is unassigned fund balance of the general fund as a percentage of total expenditures. That represented about 14.7% as of June 30th, and that was sufficient to cover 1.8 months of your general fund operating expenditures. The GFOA has come out with a recommendation that smaller governments have about 2 months of general fund operating expenditures on hand. It used to be between 5 and 15%. That 2 months is more towards the 15% range. So again, you guys are right around that range. The next slide goes over the general fund on a budgetary basis. Your original and final budget did provide for the use of fund balance of $117,000. Your actual change in fund balance was an increase of $715,000, which resulted in a favorable variance of $833,000. So overall, from a budgetary perspective, it was a big year. Okay, as far as our required auditor communications, the first page here talks about auditors' responsibilities under U.S. Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. There is a clear delineation between our responsibilities and management's responsibilities. Management is ultimately responsible for the financial statements. We're responsible for issuing an opinion on those financial statements. So although we do assist in the preparation of the financial statements, all that information comes from management. Okay? With respect to the plan, scope, and timing of the audit, again, there was no changes in the scope of work. Our timing of the audit was delayed, and that was primarily due to the transition within the finance office, which kind of pushed off the timing of the audit and then resulted in some staffing issues on our end as well. So kind of the combination of the two impacted the ultimate issuance of the audit. With respect to significant audit findings, your accounting practices are consistent and they're in accordance with the GASB. Other than the implementation of the two new accounting standards, nothing really here to note. There were no real difficulties encountered in performing the audit other than dealing with some of the internal control related matters, which we'll discuss. There were no uncorrected misstatements. There were no disagreements with management. We did obtain a management representation letter. There was nothing unusual or unique within that letter that you need to be aware of. And then as far as other audit findings, on the next slide, I would like to go through some of the internal control related matters that we identified. The first one is the material weakness of internal control over financial reporting. That is actually included in the federal and state single audit report. Again, we're required to report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in your internal control in this report. And ultimately, what we're looking for is that the town develop a monthly, quarterly, and annual closeout process. Although we did not have a significant number of audit adjustments, we did have issues getting support, reconciliations, and those sorts of things. And again, I think a lot of that was due to the transition within the finance office. So again, if you read through the federal and state single audit report, it does give some additional information with respect to that. It actually starts on page 7 of the federal and state single audit report.
Which report is that?
Single audit.
The single audit, the federal and state single audit report.
Okay, go ahead.
You got it. It's on the last one. Page 7?
Yeah, actually. It starts on page 7, but we're at page 8. That kind of includes the conditions. Again, we're reporting that the town did not have a formal monthly, quarterly, or annual closeout procedures to follow to ensure that accounts are reconciled and properly balanced periodically throughout the year and year-end. Ultimately, the effect was that audit adjustments were required to prepare the financial statements. Again, the cause we're looking at is the transition within the finance department, and then the combination of the transition with the lack of the formal procedures really kind of resulted in the material weakness. So again, from a recommendation standpoint, we're recommending that you develop a formal monthly, quarterly, and annual closeout process. And there's things that we can certainly work with Sandra to help implement. And then also recommending that analysis of the existing finance personnel and the determination of whether additional resources and or training are needed to meet the accounting and financial reporting requirements. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so we felt that that deficiency in itself rose to a level of material weakness that we needed to report this in the financial, in the federal and state single audit report. We did issue a separate letter, and these are more or less items that we are recommending to management. In the separate letter, the items are analysis and reconciliation of the small cities rehabilitation loan program. Right now, those loans aren't recorded on the general ledger. They relate back to loans that were made prior to 2004. I know there was some transition in that office as well, and so again, the recommendation there is that they perform analysis of those loans, make sure that the loans are still valid, there hasn't been transfer of property, and then obviously update those on the general ledger as well. Next item here is the maintenance of capital asset ledger in a centralized location, and then implementation of a capital asset tracking process, improving tracking of capital projects, improving tracking of grant awards and the status of grant projects, improving procedures surrounding year-end cutoff of accounts payable and encumbrances, and then last, we had a recommendation with respect to the processing of student activity disbursements through the board.
Getting back to capital assets, what do you consider capital assets in a community our size?
Capital assets would include machinery, equipment, anything that trucks, roads, infrastructure, any traffic projects.
The streets, any property that we own that would come under that?
Yep.
Okay.
Property would be on there as well. What's that?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a policy in the financial statements as far as what you would consider to be capital items.
Okay.
And that's in note 1 to the financial statements. And so I guess the issue there is, from an accounting standpoint, from a day-to-day perspective, you're not necessarily tracking those capital assets. It's more of a year-end closing, because when you actually incur the expenditure, it's recorded as an expenditure. So here it's more of a reconciliation to the government-wide financial statements, and that's the reconciliation process that we're looking to improve. So it's not an issue with the actual expenditures. Again, so there is a separate letter. I would encourage you to read through it. It has our recommendations in there. If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask questions when he's all done?
Probably easier for him just to,
Yeah.
whatever he's presenting, let him present his report, and then if you have questions as to the report, ask him at the end, rather than getting mixed up in between it.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So moving along, I guess the last slide here that I want to go over is technical updates. Again, the GASB has been busy issuing new standards. The only one that will have an impact on the town is GASB statement number 68, which is accounting and financial reporting for pension plans. That's going to require you to record your unfunded status of your pension plan in the government-wide financial statements. Right now, that information is disclosed in the notes to the financial statement. This standard will require you to actually record it on the balance sheet.
So if we're underfunded or overfunded, it would have to be listed on the financial statement. You did it this year, though. You put it in there that we're underfunded by 30%?
Correct. So the underfunded, the funded status of your pension plan is disclosed in the notes to the financial statement.
Right, I was looking at that.
Right. So that is not actually recorded as an asset or a liability for the town.
But it has to be recorded in the ledger now, not as almost a fiduciary?
Correct, yep.
In other words, taking out a fiduciary, moving it into the asset, the actual accounting of the town's assets and debt. In other words, there's going to be two things shown. You already show the total amount, what the town pays, what the employees pay, and what's in that account, which is about $9 million now.
Right.
Right. And we paid out $217,000. Okay?
Yep.
Now, we're still 30% underfunded under the guidelines set forth by what we're looking here, the GASB Statement 68. According to your thing, we're 30% underfunded. I thought we were 100% funded.
You are 100%. This is where the accounting rules have kind of changed.
Okay.
Previously, the way that the accounting would be recorded is the actuary would provide you with an actuarially annual required contribution. If you made that contribution, you would not recognize an asset or a liability. okay? Some governments were in a position where they couldn't make what the actuary was telling them to make. It was just too significant an amount, and so they would actually have to recognize liability called a net pension obligation, okay? This is moving from that view to what is the actual funded status as far as what is your present value of your actuary accrued liabilities compared to your fair value of your assets. The difference between those, which have always been disclosed, will show up on the balance sheet, okay? So, again, I think from your perspective and the board's perspective, it's not necessarily focusing on the unfunded status. It's focusing on, are you making the annual required contributions that you're supposed to? Okay, and that you guys are, you haven't. Yep.
Because we're doing about...
Talking about the pension party?
Yeah, because right now we're about $87,000 more this year than last year.
Okay.
That we put in, roughly, I mean, just off the top of my head, but we only paid out 217 and 271,000.
Yes, something like that,
Yeah, so I think that, in fairness, I think that we're well within our funding issues within the thing, but under the guideline, it says that we're 30% underfunded, which I couldn't understand. If we're only paying out 217 and we're still adding into the fund balance of the pension fund.
Right. Yeah, that's looking at it as a point in time, and again, it's going out 30 years.
Oh, it's going to, in other words, from now, 30 years down, how many employees we're going to have?
Correct.
And the cost, but in that 30 years, we can make up that 30%.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why you
Okay.
need to just be focused on what the actuary is telling you to contribute.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's why I couldn't understand it.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So again, you will reflect that unfunded position on your
Oh,
balance sheet as a liability.
Every year we'll do that. It'll show up because if it's 30 years out, it's got to show up.
Right.
Because we're not funding 30 years out, we're funding up to that point.
Right.
Today's point.
Yep. So as of today, you'd be 1.2 million underfunded, but again, if you look at over a 30-year period, you continue to make your annual required contributions. At the end of that 30 years, you would be fully funded.
Right. Okay.
So that would be like Detroit.
It's one good thing this town is, this pension is great.
So again, none of these other standards are going to have an impact on the town. It's more of an FYI. And so with that, I guess I would open it up to any questions that you have.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask? I have some issues. I read through all your remarks in regards to the deficits and what has occurred. And I got a number of questions. First of all, it doesn't matter which one we hit on, whether we hit on small cities, capital assets, projects, grain monitor, and anything else. This has been noted in a number of years. This didn't happen. This has been going on for a number of years. And I think from reading previous audit reports is that because of the change in the office, that a lot of this activity was picked up due to the fact that there was a change in the office, and it was trying to do some type of balance sheet to get it to where everybody felt comfortable. Is that a correct statement by me? Or is that where I'm off base? In other words, what I'm trying to say is that this has been going on, it's got nothing to do with the new treasurer. This is all previously things that have occurred.
No, I think the issue is that the prior treasurer had done a lot of the actual closing process. And so she would actually provide us with whatever information that we needed, without necessarily leaving a good trail so that when, I guess, the new treasurer came in, there was something that she could follow in order to kind of close out the books. I know she was retained to come in to help close out the books. And, you know, certain journal entries were recorded to close out things. Part of the issue that we had is that we didn't necessarily have support that was readily available for those entries. It wasn't that the entries were wrong. It was just that it took a while to get the actual support for the entries.
Okay, now,
Well, you got to remember, Barton, Paula left in December of 2012. And from that period on, she worked approximately 92 hours. There was an interim treasurer at the time.
oh,
So there was a lot of, it was difficult You know, in the private sector, somebody leaves and that's it, you know, in the public sector, somebody leaves and that's it, somebody else takes over. And there was just, you know, it sounds like what he's saying is, you know, the closing of certain,
Well, I think that it's been going like the different grant monitoring, and look at small cities grant monitoring and everything else. If you look at grant monitoring, we've been going through grants for years, and if we're not monitoring these grants properly, I brought up an issue to you about the sleep line. You never addressed it in your audit. I mean, and I have different questions when, and I'm not trying to throw the things, but if there's an issue with a grant, and there's issues with grants that you list, okay, how does this board address this issue to the department heads? How do we say either you do it, or how do we address it to the department head that say, you're responsible. If you don't do this, what authority do we have to address this issue with the department heads? Because as far as I'm concerned, if the department heads get grants, they're responsible for the grants, no matter if it goes through the highway department, goes through the mayor's office, goes through the water and sewer. They're responsible. We don't have the expertise to sit here and say, geez, how much was spent on the grant? Where's the ledger for it?
Right.
We should have that in front of us,
Right.
and yet we don't.
Right.
That's the question I have. So my question to you is, how, as a board, do we address this issue to our department heads and the different water and sewer?
Right.
I think we create a policy.
Right.
Marty. We just pretty much, you know, similar to what Peter did with the bidding ordinance, right? I think, yeah, okay. And we just create a policy, we say, this is what we want done, and that's it.
Well, I think that we should have it in front of us before, like you said. Once a month, we got the school board in front of us,
Yeah.
we got the general government in front of us. Everybody that has a grant should have a report in front of us, so we know.
Well, I would back up and say, what I'm looking to recommend, and this is one of the things that I was going to talk to Sandy about, is ultimately the finance office should be aware of all grant programs
I agree with
that are taking place. And those, so they almost should act as the hub. They don't necessarily have to administer the program.
Well, no.
But they need to be aware of, you know, what are the compliance requirements, you know, what has been spent on it, so they can record the related revenue and track that, make sure that they don't overspend the grant. So that I think from my perspective, the finance office should kind of be up to that.
I agree with you, but if it's in the finance, it should be in a ledger, so we.
Well, wait
Yeah,
a second.
With our new software, a lot of the recommendations, I come from places where we closed monthly, we closed quarterly, we definitely closed annually. That, you know, we had an old DOS system and it was never closed. With this system, and Delpha and Doug, myself and a couple others, reviewed the grants management module with AccuFund, where you can enter the grant when you apply for it, when you get it, what the award is, if it's a matching, if it's a reimbursement. The task lists come up of what you need to do next. It can do all kinds of reporting. You can scan and attach documents, whether it's the award letter, all kinds of stuff. It's really powerful. It's what we need.
Now, would it address all the issues that are here?
Absolutely.
From a grant perspective.
From a
You know,
grant
like
perspective.
just, you know, from a grant perspective and from all the other stuff that we're doing, you know, like we are going to be able to, if we get Microsoft Outlook, automatically email reports to each department head to let them know, here's your budget, here's your actual and your variances and all that. Everything's going to be there. The auditors will be able to have access to go into our software and look at anything. They do this with the Board of Ed. It works out pretty well.
Do
So,
we have that ability with the previous software?
no,
That answers it.
no, no.
No.
We did
No, Bob.
not have a fully integrated system in the past.
We had pencils.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
lots of pencils.
And then the system that we presently have is an interface, well, we interface this system that we have now with the school board system will be interfaced so you can do either or, you can get the
They-
information.
They have their own software system,
I know, but
which is Tyler.
can we interface it with the software that you're talking about? So in other words, you can pull it up without going into their own program?
No, they're almost, you know, they're
No.
separate, kind of like WPCA
Yeah.
is separate,
Okay.
you know, so.
I've got a very simple question. All of these recommendations seem to, I guess I should ask this question first. Do you feel that these recommendations, the fact that we were in transition in our financial department, will work themselves out with the fact that there's now someone dedicated in the position? Or do you feel that because you weren't getting your support and some of these, whether they're now aided by software or otherwise, some of these things are being slipped through the cracks because of a personnel issue? Do we need help for our finance, you know, should there be someone else doing work in there so these things don't slip through?
A lot of it is kind of an FYI. I mean, unfortunately, it's part of the scope of the audit. We're not necessarily looking at responsibilities.
And I'm not asking
No,
you,
sir.
but
So I think that would be
the-
more of a
but the
management
word
question.
personnel comes up often in the report. You
We're
know,
short-staffed.
That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a lot of this would be cured, frankly, with getting you a little human help. The software's only going to take you so
In
far.
my budget, I have asked for a senior accountant, so, I mean,
This is Putnam,
That's
slow
what I
down.
did.
no, you know, well, call it a person, I need another body.
No,
We have-
it sounds like to me, frankly, I agree with you. I think it sounds like to me that, because the greatest software in the world, you've got to put something into it. Somebody's physically got to sit there and put this stuff into it. And a lot of this simply sounds like someone is overwhelmed with their time, and it sounds like we need to support that with someone who is going to be working on some of the more menial tasks and may be able to support our auditors directly. I mean, it sounds like a lot of things may have, this whole report may not be here if it wasn't just one person doing it. That's what it sounds like to me.
You know,
And the important thing, I guess, is this is not just from an external perspective. I mean, obviously, we're looking at it from an external
Yeah.
perspective, but from an internal perspective, you know, this is probably valuable information that you want to know as a board too, on an ongoing basis.
Well, I think that if you look back through the other audit reports, you addressed a lot of these previous things in previous reports. It's never been addressed.
We've never had support in the financial office. I mean,
Well, no, but they never came forward. I mean, I think at this point.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, either one of you, but at the moment, the software that we had prior to Sandra coming was really tough software. Nobody spent I don't know what the numbers were in those days, but whatever it is, those thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to put that stuff up. Everybody was, I'm not saying happy, but everybody seemed okay with whatever was coming out.
We tried for years. We did the computer work for the town for years. And we banged our heads against the wall telling them. Part of it was Paula. I mean, she was the good old-fashioned pencil paper accountant. And, you know, a lot of people don't like change. They've been doing it the same way for a long time. And then it's very expensive. The longer you go with an antiquated piece of technology, the more you're going to pay when it forces you to
Just like
upgrade.
this evening, I was talking with Sandra about the next piece that needs to go in with regards to what she has to bring it up to do the things that she just talked about. I mean, that's in the next fiscal year for $17,000. All these things cost, you know, a CPA or whoever it is, someone to come in to assist Sandra doing that type of stuff. What's that, $40,000, $50,000, or
CPA
60,
more than that.
whatever level you're going at with it. I mean, by the time you get all and done, paying someone whatever the salary is, putting the update in, computers and everything else, you've got $100,000. And, you know, and you go to town meetings and you get a lot of problems with that. You know, well, why can't we do it with a pen? Well, you know, it just doesn't work. The more we get grants, Delphus grants, and things along those, whatever those grants are, whatever these things that we get for, you know, whatever they are. I mean, somebody's got to put down, and if you want the stuff monthly, which I agree with, you know, you have to have somebody in the background on that keyboard putting that stuff in. Someone's got to do it, and it just can't be Sandra. It just couldn't be Paula. I mean, you need more than that to do that.
I don't disagree with you. The only thing I disagree with is that eventually we're going to get in trouble with one of these grants. that it is an administrative right.
Well,
And we're gonna have to pay the state back, and that
I absolutely
gonna look cheap.
agree.
So I think it's
But at the moment here, we are where we are. Sandra's trying to get on top of this stuff. She's working at it. She's working at it with this firm, and that's not really not their duty, and, and we're trying to bring it up there, I guess. I don't know that we are, don't know that we're not. Assuming every time I see Sandra, she talks about what needs to be done and whatever it is. I mean, if we want to come up with money, I'm not saying tonight, but, if we want to come up with money to hire somebody today, between now and the 1st of July, we could do that too. We could go spend 17 tonight and go get,
I want to clarify about the 17.
you know what I'm saying.
Well, no, because, people think, oh, we need 17,000 extra dollars.
No,
And what we were paying for our old DOS system before was
Yeah.
9,200. So it's the difference. I mean, we were paying almost 10 grand anyway.
Yeah.
So,
It's really
and
unsettling.
that's a really good price
You
for
should
the
see my
software,
face
and
when I
it's
found
really
that.
powerful software.
but all that stuff is difficult. I mean, we're coming out with regards to the old system, and I'll just call it the old system. We're coming out of not the best system going, that we had before. Whatever those reasons are, and people that were around and what have you and everything else, just nodded and say, well, as long as it doesn't really bite us bad, it's okay. And people accepted it, and that's just the way it is. Can't change it now, but we can't change it then from what happened, but we certainly can give a heck of a try, and we should do it to bring it up to speed so that everything that meets the accounting rules and regulations and GPS or whatever it is, government practices, and whatever it needs to be done. And that's going to take time. It's going to take hiring somebody, an additional staff, to stand, and it's just not someone that puts numbers in, it has to understand what it is that they're doing and have the knowledge to do it. That's not going to be cheap. And and you need, just like you see that all the time in the paper, right? You need space for it. I mean, maybe we'll put the person in Delpa's office, you could share
Well,
another
there
person.
used to be 3 people in the next
Yeah,
office over,
yeah,
so there's only 2 in there right now.
But you know what I'm saying, is that it's kind of hard to hire somebody that's a CPA and tell him he or she has to work, in a place that it's
don't
not
need a
quiet for 20
CPA.
minutes, So, I mean, there's a lot of things that have to be done. And hopefully in the budget process that we're coming out with, we can take some of the recommendations of the accountant, some of the recommendation of Sandra and from the Board of Finance ourselves, and from the Selectman's office, and do something to bring this more up to speed.
Well, I think it should come from this board. because-
Well, but you gotta get the money, yeah, but
I know, but then we should ask for the money as a finance board.
But we don't even know what we're asking for tonight. I think we got to spend some time
I agree.
figuring out what we're going to get. If we're talking about the CPAs are all different
We don't need a
levels.
CPA.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just using that as an example. I mean, it has to have some idea of what the quality of person that you're looking for. You're probably looking for someone that's more than a year out of high school. I mean, you need someone who's coming with knowledge of how to do it. You can't expect to get this stuff from someone who doesn't have some experience, and it can't all be Sandra.
You're looking at about $40,000 to $45,000.
That's what I figured.
This is what I do for a living now.
I put 50,000 in my budget,
At the max.
or a request.
Yeah, you gave the Library Exploratory Committee $40,000, but went down the toilet. You can,
I mean, you just, fine, but,
I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think that we should have a plan in place through Sandra, working with Sandra, this board, to come up with what she needs, the cost associated with it, and bring it into the budget. And then we have to defend it along with
I
Sandra.
have no argument with that at all.
You know what, I think that's part of the board, and I think that's what I want to do. I want to address these issues
But
that,
we need that, the time, I mean,
We can do that during the budget.
yeah, I know, but I mean, this is why I'm questioning all this tonight. I don't mean to throw stones at anybody, but I don't care what happened in the past. we've gotten away with it, we've been very fortunate, but if we find, if one of these grants go belly up, or something goes happen, and then the town's gotta kick in that $200,000 because we're not monitoring them right, this $100,000 that we spend is gonna be real cheap in the long
And
run.
the other question they had with regards to the school, I mean, we're talking about, the town budget is, I don't know, 5 million, something like that, more or less. And you got grants and what have you. I mean, the big person in the room is the Board of Education. That's where the money is. And that's where the grants are and things along those. We're not going to be able to interface in that with what we have. It just isn't going to happen. My own thought on it, but it's not going, just like with regards to the water department. The water department's basically, whether we like the magnesium plant or we don't like the magnesium plant, it's the magnesium plant.
I just asked that
And
question.
that's just a tremendous, and you know, when we looked at this slide, I guess that's what you call it, the slide thing, I mean, you know, when you talk about $5 million, whatever it was with the, when it's on the agenda, we talked about the water plant and what have you, I mean, those are serious grants.
In the last 3 years, we've gotten some serious money in grants.
Those are
And you're
serious
absolutely right.
grants.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, you know, you suggested, Barney, that, you know, you'd hate to find out at the end of the day they were poorly run. Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't like to find out tomorrow afternoon you owe $1 million or something along those lines. I absolutely agree with you. And, you know, you're just doing what you hope, what you need to do. Okay?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, just trying to shoot.
No, I mean, that's what I'm just trying to bring forward. I'm not trying to throw stones at anybody. I think that we're in the 20th century. Let's be in the 20th century. Let's not be backwards. I
It
mean,
depends what end of the 20th here.
yeah.
We're in the
prevention.
21st, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
I got a couple more questions for you, if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
On LoSiP, I noticed on the LoSiP thing, we were awarded $100,000 for LoSiP in that year, and we didn't spend it. But you didn't incorporate the previous LoSiP grant or the town road aid grant. In other words, that's a carryover just about every year, okay? What, you didn't pick up what was left in there, you know, from the previous year, and you didn't carry it over. You just put a projection that they received $100,000, and we never spent the $100,000 during that course of that year. And the town road aid, there was so much left, and what, you didn't put the carryover in. So basically, when I look at them figures, I don't know what we got in LoSiP, a total amount. I don't know what I got in town road.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? I think that,
Yeah, it's-
I thought that had to be is it a cumulative? I thought it was done cumulatively over the years. In other words, if you didn't spend it, you carried over to the next year.
Correct. The LoSiP funding is actually reimbursement based. So you have to spend the money first and submit for reimbursement before you actually receive those funds.
Okay. Town road aid isn't that?
County
one?
road, you get the money, it just comes in.
Okay.
But again, you should be recognizing the revenue to the extent you incur allowable expenditures. And so it could certainly carry over fiscal years.
Well, I think it'd be, I mean, I'm looking at the figures, and if I look at LoSiP and town road aid, those are two issues that we have money, that when we're looking at a budget year coming up,
Yep.
and it's tight, where maybe we could use this money in other positions for maintenance of the roads and stuff like that, and take some of the money out. That's, but without that information, that audited information,
Right.
where do I go?
You'd probably go to the state website. I think you can, the state identifies what you've been allotted for LoSiP funds.
Right.
And the town should know what they've actually spent under those
Right.
funds, and so you should have kind of a balance.
We don't have a balance sheet on that, that's what I'm saying.
I understand it's not going to show up in the financial statement, so that's part of the, overall grant management process that you would want to know, what were we awarded for this grant? How much have we spent? How much do we have left over? That's more of an internal tracking thing. That's not going to show up necessarily in the financials.
Unless we ask you to look at that particular item in other words.
Right. I mean, if I looked at the information I had, I'd give it to you in my head,
Yeah.
but it's not going to show up necessarily
In the
audit and the reports, because that's not how the financial reporting goes.
Now, have you spent more time with this audit than previous audits? and are we gonna get charged more than what's we budgeted for? Any idea?
No, we were not gonna come back and do an additional bill.
Okay.
And again, one of the things that I'm looking at is obviously to help improve the efficiency of the audit process as well, not only to help you guys, but to help us. So, you know, there was some additional costs in the audit this year because of our transition again. But no, we weren't gonna go back and look to do an additional bill. Unless you would.
Like to.
Just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
You done a great job.
6 months.
On a landfill closure account, I know you make remarks in there and you contradict yourself. That landfill closure fund was supposed to be for the closure of our landfill. And if you look back in 1993, we signed a contract with Wheelbrae Incorporated, which you address in further down the line,
Okay.
saying that that is the case, that they're responsible for anything around them, and we're just responsible for our portion of the landfill that we had over the years. And in the initial phase, when we closed it, it was $2.8 million that we were responsible for to maintain for 30 years, and Wheelbrae was going to pay up to $2 million of that amount. What I'm saying is that landfill closure is more of a slush fund than anything. And second of all, in the original agreement, we were paying, if you read the original agreement, they were paying rent of $250,000 per year as long as the facility was open. Now, I think that should be in a line item by itself because it was in a contract agreement that Wheelbrae would pay $250,000 per year as long as the landfill is in operation. So I think that is different from what we bring in for ash fill itself. This is just rental of that land.
Right.
The ground underneath.
Okay.
Okay, that's where I think
Okay.
that there should be a separation.
Separation between.
Yeah,
the different-
because basically, we're gonna get it, as long as it's operating, it could be zero amount of ash or
Activity.
fill that come in there, and we'd
Right.
still get the two, as long as it was open.
Right.
And it was permitted,
Yep.
okay?
Okay. All right. No, I mean, that's, you know, certainly I would make that recommendation to Sandy.
Yeah.
And we can certainly take a look at it. But yeah, I do want to know that from the budgetary perspective, certainly.
I'm too glad you came.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? If you have any follow-up questions, my contact information is on
The back
sheet. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the electronic.
Oh, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, number 4, the correspondence from A, B, and C from the Board of Education. It's not a reporting month, but they have the information in there. Quarterly reports from general government, again, not a reporting month. And a letter dated February 12th from the Registrar of Voters regarding the upcoming changes, how they will impact the coming budget. Pretty self-explanatory in there.
If you read that, I gotta find it first.
Yeah.
You know, even though I've been away from the registrar's office for, I don't know, maybe 3 years, time goes by fast when you're having fun, but I knew this was going to happen eventually because when I was in office, and I'm sure Bob and did the same thing, we were getting reimbursed for a lot of stuff from the state, telephone bills, we were getting reimbursed for the
Maintenance of
carts,
machines.
the machines. I mean, they would come in and repair them. You know, we're not going to be able to get that anymore. And since the state has decided to have same-day registration in their wisdom, that means that adds more manpower. You also need a separate rooms that are promoted. I think, I saw this and I was impressed. I said, I think they've taken a bold approach by letting us know and letting the mayor know that, as a board of selectmen, that, hey,
Gonna cost.
costs are going up. And they've been able to, come up with pretty much a description of why, and what the costs are going to be and why it's happening. It's just unfortunate that we're getting mandated by the state, and again, it's an unfunded mandate. When they first introduced those machines, they gave them to us. Then when we had to make discs, the cards, they paid for it. They paid for telephone bills, they paid for just about everything. And I just kept submitting that stuff in there, we kept getting reimbursed. So it really didn't affect the budget that much. All we really worried about was manpower, registrars, and the food that they eat, which they don't really eat that much for a bunch of people that work hard. But now we're going to have to pay for some of the infrastructure. And they're going to need another voting machine. And you know well, because you're a moderator on these Putnams.
I think, like you say, I think this is long, the state just keeps mandating. This one-day voting registration is going to turn into a nightmare. It was with the presidential. And this is something that we won't have to, you can't cut, because you must cut it, you're not going to have votes. You
Well, but you're still going to have the votes. The state's going to tell you you can't go ahead and just not have a vote if you don't have money in a budget.
They're going to provide to us, I assume, when
Yes.
the budget comes out.
I believe
what
so,
that
right.
actually-
Yes,
What that actually means.
This is taken under consideration with the mayor's budget.
What it actually is going to cost, and I don't know how much more it's going to cost. But, when you're talking 4 or 5 people, and it's not thousands and thousands, but it's going to cost more, as much.
And they're trying to follow the rules.
Well, it's all rules.
And they're well aware of the cost. They don't want to see the cost go up. They're tight like I was at the time. They're just as tight.
Can't believe that.
And we don't really pay our people a heck of a lot, to work.
Well, it's just like with the Board of Ed. All the required mandates.
Don't compare us to the Board of Ed.
Well, but a lot of that stuff, we complain about it every year, have something, and not complain, maybe it's the wrong word, we say something about it every year, but a lot of that stuff is required, whether you like it or not. You want the money, and you want this, you're going to do it, and that's all there is to it. Core and things along those lines, they require it. Not much you can do about it. Does anybody want to make a comment on the 2 other things, the Board of Ed stuff and the Sandra stuff, with regards to, she's going to be speaking.
Well, I looked at the Board of Ed stuff, and I got some information from him. I'm very satisfied with what I'm reading. The grants are very sophisticated and very in-depth information I got from the Board of Ed, from the superintendent of schools. If we had that information, because their financial people are up on the ball, and I get that information, and I can correlate it with anything I see on paper and the ledger and everything else. So that's what I want to see in the town government budget the same way.
They certainly have had the resources to do that.
Oh, yes. True grants.
Whatever. But, okay. Finance Director's report. Thank you, Sandra.
You're welcome.
Oh,
How's the new software going?
It's wonderful. We're up and running on all the modules that we have, including payroll. So,
Payroll, you doing payroll now?
yes,
Good.
yes.
When did you first turn the key, do you remember?
October
October?
15th-ish.
Yeah, 16th?
Yep.
All right, we're 4 months into the ball game, all right. Good. Well, I know you told us at the time that you came for the extra money, which that was sometime in the summer, if I recall correctly. And said that it would work out real good, and I'm glad it has.
Yes, we definitely needed to do something. And I came on board. I was really only here for a matter of weeks into the last fiscal year. And with all the changes in the interim, and I know there was a remark that we had an interim treasurer, and we did, which was part-time, and she basically worked with Doug on the budget, so nothing else got done. So I came in here, and not only not having anything, no directions, learning a DOS system. I also had to learn Eileen's job because she was taking a lot of vacation days, and there was like 3+ months of stuff that wasn't done. And so I've spent a lot of hours. Then plus looking at new software, implementing new software. I'm leaving for vacation tomorrow night. And so I'll be back and we'll be right into budget season.
Well,
Oh, boy.
That's all part of the big bucks we pay them.
Yeah.
I thought she was about to ask for a raise.
It sounded like that.
Actually, you guys got a really good bargain when I decided to come here. So.
Can I ask Sandra one question?
Sure.
Just one?
On the payroll, is that going to keep track of the old days, the vacation days, and everything? Is that software that sophisticated that it's going to take care of all their vacation time, sick time, and everything else is going to be in there?
Yes.
So we're not going to send it out to an outside vendor? Or, I mean, Caroline did it before, right? Is she
We
going to
have-
do the data entry on it? Is that the
The
idea?
system will, we haven't turned it on with regard to it printing out on people's paycheck stubs, but it will track, you'll be able to see how much vacation time you have, if you used any, what your balance is, sick time, personal, all that stuff.
You know, Barney, it was very frustrating for me as the vice chairman of the WPCA to look at the timesheets every week or every other week and see the numbers didn't match. Okay, vacation, sick. What else they get? They get personal.
Personal, but
And then there's comp
WPCA,
time and everything else. There was always a difference. There was always a difference because it was really being kept with a track of with a spreadsheet, right?
yes, and WPCA outsources their payroll to Common Sense in Pomfret, so they're not using the payroll module.
We're not using the payroll module? No?
No, because you guys always outsource your payroll.
Okay. All right, we'll get that fixed.
You could use the payroll module.
All right.
No. Anything else, Sandra?
Enjoy your vacation, have a cocktail for me.
I'll have two.
Okay, unfinished business. Water and sewer.
Sewer plant is virtually completed. There's still a few minor things that have to be done, but expected that we'll have an open house and a ribbon cutting sometime this spring. The well fields, we've got our diversion permit, and so we're just waiting now to fine tune that in terms of when we're actually going to turn the tap on the new wells. New projects that we're starting up on and hopefully going out to bid on the water line and replacement and relining project. That will be approximately $4 million as a first phase. There's because of the USDA funding, we'll probably be splitting that up into 3 different phases. And that's a total for the water line replacement and relining is going to be in the vicinity of $15 million.
How much?
$15 million.
I thought at first it was 8.
Was that?
I thought it was 8 at first.
7.5 was the initial,
7.5
but
was
we
the
have
original.
since
Yeah.
expanded the scope to go up to 15. We have the initial appropriation for 7.5. We'll have to come back. Once we get the approval from the USDA on the grant and the loan, we'll come back to the town to get the additional appropriation approved or considered to be approved
That's already, all of that is built into the
rates.
into the rates.
Right.
Even
There's
the
no
extra
waiting.
7.5 million?
Even the
Yeah,
extra
all of that is
7.5.
built into the rates, yes.
Got it.
When we first started planning on all of these projects, Jim Shore insisted that, if we're gonna do a rate increase, we're gonna do it once and once only, and we're gonna do it based on the projects that we had planned, and those are the projects.
And the other thing that you might have noticed from the audit in terms of on the business activities, the enterprise funds, is that we've been accumulating a significant amount of cash in order to account for the fact that when all these projects get permanently financed, the money will be available for that. So the WPCA did their planning properly in terms of anticipating that eventually these projects will be permanently financed. We've already permanently financed the well fields and also the sewer plant. So those are on the books now, and So the rates that we increased will, are going to be coming up in terms of paying for the permanent financing on those two projects.
On a solar plant, was it it was $16 million total, right?
16 all told, $17 million, wasn't it?
18.8.
18 million, yeah.
18 million.
18.8.
Didn't we just borrow 8.5 million?
I'm sorry?
On a solar plant, I don't know, solar plant, we borrowed 8.5 million total?
Sewer plant, how much did we borrow for that?
It was about 50-50 between
50-50,
grant
wasn't
and,
it?
yeah, maybe a little bit more, maybe it was a
Grant, yeah.
55,
Yeah, that's what I
60.
thought, somewhere
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
Yeah,
And that, I looked at the audit, and that's already been, the long-term bond was the 8.5 million, right?
Long-term, but I think we got good rates on the bonds, don't we?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Real good rates.
I looked at that. And the water plant, and on that 15 million, we're gonna run into problems with the school coming up, the school, the bond initiative, they're gonna have to take a backseat, that extra 7 million, till the school is in.
so you're paying for two different sources.
Yeah, it's coming from two different sources, but we
Since-
can only
since
borrow so
the-
much.
No. Water does not get calculated towards your debt
Was that
limitation.
total amount?
Right. Then we got the manganese treatment project that we're hoping that Bill St. Ange, our town attorney, is reviewing the contract for the design build on manganese treatment. And we are about 90% designed on the sewer lift stations. Hopefully with those can go out to bid pretty soon on the 10 sewer lift stations. So we're out of the consent order. We have two diversion permits, one for the Little River, to take water out of Little River, and now we have a diversion permit for the well fields. So we're all set there, and we can, if people want to tie in, new tie-ins to the water system, we have the ability to do that.
We're still waiting for word from Thompson, because Thompson has to upgrade their sewer plant. They did meet with us in the fall, if I recall correctly, after the WPCA, their WPCA there. And we pretty much laid out what could be done. I mean, they're gonna have to run a line all the way from their facility all the way down here to Canal Street. There was no way that you could hook into our line on Mechanic Street, is that right?
Right.
Mechanic Street, because of the fact that along the way, I guess in their wisdom in those days, they put a big pipe, little pipe, big pipe, little pipe, and it doesn't work. You know, you can't get it all the way down here without running into some problems. So we discussed a number of different options, you know, that they could do, run the line all the way down, or process it right there at their plant, right? And that we talked about that, and then just send it down. The other town that's seriously interested is Pomfret.
In fact, Pomfret might happen sooner than Thompson.
I think Pomfret will happen sooner than Thompson.
And Pomfret would be taking into account Rectory School, Pomfret School, and Lutz International. And what they're thinking about now, one of the ways that they would bring the sewer into Putnam is to drop the sewer down Pomfret Hill, down to the trailhead for the, remember where the Big Ant was? On 44 and 169. That's the trailhead for the airline trail. Drop it down there, run it, the force main on the airline trail, all right into Putnam, and then possibly tie into the Wheelbridge force main. So.
Their rate would be very similar to Woodstock.
Woodstock.
It's a rate that includes a surcharge, if I recall correctly, and that's pretty much a surcharge for maintenance, you know, the maintenance
Capital costs.
Capital costs. Whether or not they would need a lift station, I really don't know about that. It would probably come right down.
They need a lift station, but it'd be in their town, so.
That's their problem.
Yeah.
The lift stations really needed to be rebuilt. I mean, we had reached a point where they were being kept together with Band-Aids, especially the lift station on Peak Road.
Paper road.
There was a number of failures there caused by, really, some of it was Woodstock's fault because there was more water coming in than effluent, you know, so they got cited by the EPA for DEP rather. The DEP cited them and said, you got to fix that. You can't be just, you're supposed to be bringing crap down through there, not water. So they worked on it.
Now, you're saying that we're not pumping out of new wells yet?
No, not yet.
So we're still using Little River for our main source of water and the old wells that we've been
Right, and
pumping
then we
on.
got 800,000, we're allowed up to 800,000 gallons
800,000 a
from
day
Connecticut Water.
How long was that contract with Connecticut Water?
It was a 10-year contract, and
Is
we're
it 10
about,
years? Yeah, okay.
probably, we're probably
hoping it
3 or
was
4
5.
years into it
I
already.
was hoping it was 5, but I guess it's not, it's 10, you're right.
And so evidently you're gonna put in the magnesium
Treatment.
treatment before you stop pumping, is that your?
No,
No.
no, we'll start pumping the wells before
There's
the
just
maintenance
certain wells that
treatment.
need the magnesium.
Not all of them.
Right,
Just certain wells,
right,
Just certain wells where we get magnesium, the manganese rather.
manganese.
Manganese. There's just
Yeah, we don't want magnesium.
Yeah, I know. There's just certain wells, I think it's the Bedrock. I think.
Bedrock is the
Yeah.
primary well.
And Connecticut Water has the same issue, so it's not like it's only us here at our well field. It's an issue that Connecticut Water has in Killington.
Okay. Moving on. Technology Park?
I'm happy to report that all the issues resolved with the transfer of the land to the town of Putnam have been resolved. We're waiting for the final documentation that will allow both parties to sign it. And as part of that is we worked out the details in terms of the sand and gravel removal, which we wanted to ensure that that was being done properly, because we'll be a partner to that. So once that happens, we'll have the land transferred to the town of Putnam. The question is how soon would we transfer the land to the YMCA? The thinking right now is the possibility was that we would wait until the gravel comes off the site and have a final reconciliation of how much gravel was taken off the site, and have an as-built plan, and then once that's done, transfer the land to the YMCA. But that could change, and the Y could say we'd like to have the land as soon as possible. So.
Bridge?
The bridge, hopefully we can go out to bid on the bridge this spring.
And?
The only thing holding that up is same thing that had held it up before, which was the flood management certification that they had to get through the state. And we're waiting on the state Historic Preservation Office to give us a ruling on to remediate the site where we found Native American or artifacts from the Native American or Native peoples era. And what we're planning to do is just have that covered, and it will not be impacted by the construction. So basically we'll leave those artifacts in place and cover it so that it will ensure that no activities from the bridge or the road construction will impact those artifacts.
That's the time.
Huh?
That's the time frame.
The time frame?
Yeah.
We're looking at, if we go out to bid and start the construction this spring, that we're looking at September 2015. So it'll be a parallel track to the bridge, and the roads being constructed and utilities being brought in, and at the same time, the YMCA would be building their facility.
Would they be using what's there now?
They'd be using the existing bridge now, and that's all worked out in the agreements.
Yep.
And how about the utilities we gotta bring in? Is there any cost estimates on the utilities?
Yes, I do have cost estimate in the
And how
utilities.
much
I don't
that
have it in
would
front of
cost?
me, but
Yeah,
I
how
can
much it's
provide
gonna
that to
cost
you.
the town?
We had always planned that our portion of the utilities and the infrastructure was in the range of about $3 million.
So that's gonna have to go to referendum.
That would have to go to referendum.
Yeah.
What's the score?
I don't know what that is.
Nothing on tonight.
Oh, it's some fight.
We don't have to go, we don't have to vote or anything, right?
No.
On that, okay.
Okay. The next one is for yourself too, the pay classification.
Based on your approval 2 months ago, or 1 month ago? 1 month ago. You authorized me to go ahead to contract with DCOG to
Yep.
do a pay classification. You had given us authority up to $20,000. We're not going to spend nowhere near $20,000.
That's
So
always
we'll raise
good.
to $5,000. And that classification report will be available to the Board of Selectmen and the Mayor and then also a presentation to the Board of Finance once we get that information.
What do you think, time frame?
I'm thinking within the next 30 days.
they're gonna, let me ask you, is that going to be for the happy season?
What happy season is that?
Budget.
Oh, yes, it's gonna have to be before the budget season.
It's not, doesn't have to be, but
Well, it doesn't have to be, but that's sort of the point of it.
that's what I thought. But you think it will be, done?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask a question on that, with your permission?
Absolutely not. What, Alpha?
Does that include an administrative study or just pay classifications?
What do you mean?
Going through the building and looking at every office to see if it's appropriately staffed?
No. Just pay classification.
Just pay cuts, right?
Just a who, just,
Pay classification.
And that's
that's not
from the top down, isn't it?
Right.
but not all the way down.
No, because that's controlled by the
is that?
union contract.
That's right, the union pretty much,
It shouldn't take long, they've got that data sitting there already.
yeah.
Yeah, you talked to John Filchek, though, he would want it doing 30 communities. I said, no.
Yeah,
If we're gonna do 10, here's the communities we're gonna do.
it's making you feel like you're getting your money's worth.
Right,
That's what they're
exactly.
Okay, under new business, the sale of lot 19-1 in the I-Park.
Right. I'm requesting the consideration for the sale of lot 19-1, which is the end of Ridge Road. That's approximately 40-acre lot that is recently
How many, how large?
The whole lot is about 43.
43?
Yeah.
Nine.
40, no, the whole lot of lot 19. It has been subdivided
Oh, okay.
just recently. The back, probably 20 acres are not buildable based on a steep slope and severe wetlands. This lot of 19-1 that was recently subdivided would go to Foster Corporation for the price of $209,435. Lot 9-1 is 9.21 acres.
291,000?
209,435.
I'm deaf.
That's okay. I'll
All
speak
right.
louder.
Thank you.
And also, I would ask that the consideration of approval, that we ask for the right of first refusal on lot 19-2. They are doing a 3-phase expansion of their business across the road onto lot 19. And they are asking for the right of first refusal for lot 19-2, which is approximately 7.2 acres.
Foster is asking for that?
Yes. Yes. They have a planned phased expansion of, phase 1 is 30,000 square feet, phase 2 is 30,000 square feet, and phase 3, I think, is around 20,000 square feet. Don't quote me on that. The sale price has been approved by the Connecticut DECD per our I-Park
Who is
plan.
that?
Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. Any sale of our lots in the industrial park have to be approved by them first, and we have to have them appraised, and they have to approve the sale price of that. We are no longer mandated as of February 1 of this year,
Oh, I thought it was January 1st, February 1st.
February 1st. Yeah.
Who appraises that stuff?
We have to get an appraiser, and,
This has been done?
yes, sir. Yep.
Did we have to go through any other commissions?
Yes, we have to go to the planning commission.
They haven't done that yet?
We have.
Oh, you have?
They have.
40 minutes ago.
Oh, you
Yeah.
did, okay.
Yes, and they have approved it. They have approved the subdivision at their last month's meeting, and they approved the sale of that this evening. Again, with the caveat that right of first refusal for lot 19-2.
I'll make that a form of motion.
What's
We
that?
approve it.
Is anything? Oh,
The form of motion that we
Sounds
approve
like-
the sale
Okay.
of the, I got to put my
What-
glasses
okay.
on.
One of the considerations is, again, sale of land might be considered for inclusion in the, although we haven't got it approved yet, but in the Economic Development Trust Fund. So,
Well, we can't do that, we can just approve the sale of the lot till we approve it at town meeting, we can't put in anything.
but the thing is, if we go to town meeting with the sale of the lot, we'd have to come back here first, so.
Well,
For,
The horse is
for
before
the
cart.
the
Cart's
consideration.
before the horse.
Okay, I'm just bringing it up
yeah, I
at
hear
this
you, I
point.
hear you.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the sale of 19-1.
And a right of first refusal on 19, you need that in the form of motion
Please.
too?
But that's not on the agenda. But anyway, okay, and the approval of...
Right of first refusal on 19.2.
There's second.
Yeah, 19-2, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second, only right.
There's second?
Yes,
Second? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? There you go.
What's gonna happen with the motion that we passed, but it hasn't been approved at the town meeting,
Right.
of actually taking this, now here's where we get into that situation where, I'm assuming we're gonna get into that situation, 209,435. Then we're gonna have to make a decision on how much is gonna come to the general fund, and how much is gonna go to the economic
Economic
development.
Trust.
Will that be done at a town meeting?
Yes.
So it doesn't, we don't make a recommendation?
Yes, you do.
We do?
Oh, you
We
have
don't
to
need
make
approval.
Now, we'll do that next meeting.
Well,
You do at the town meeting, we make a recommendation.
no,
of what
it has
we
to come
want
to, anything that has an appropriation value has to come to the Board of Finance.
Okay, so we'd have to do it next month probably.
Right.
Okay.
So we get if we get the town meeting approval, then we have the Economic Development Trust Fund established. And when this comes in, you're right, because you won't be able to go to the town meeting until April, probably.
Another question, Doug, which is kind of away from it. With regards to the park and
Yes.
YMCA, when do you think that people would be talking about taking,
a swim.
no. We might not live that long, but but taking the gravel off of it
They have to do it by June 30th.
this year?
This year.
So when we're talking about usable gravel, waste gravel, and what have you, who's keeping track of all of that?
The respective parties, which is Wheelbrader and Town of Putnam.
Okay, who from the town of Putnam is counting the yards? No, seriously, I mean, because you're talking about a lot of money.
Yeah, 145,000.
Yeah, on 100,000. 50 cents, 45 cents or something on
$1.35 a yard.
on the waste
You get a
gravel.
job.
Which isn't much.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whatever it is, that's, whatever it is. So, we're talking about that amount of money, the 200 that we're talking about in this. So we're talking about 350,000 as a round number.
For gravel?
No,
Well, yeah,
for the sale of the park, it's 200 for the lot.
$500,000.
Yeah, but why would the gravel go into that?
Anything sold off of there counts.
How? Why wouldn't it go in the general fund?
No, that isn't what I think I read. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah, you didn't read it.
I'll read it again.
It's my understanding that,
I didn't get that.
well, maybe I'm wrong. I'm okay being wrong.
Well, I gotta get the gravel
Well, no,
thing first.
when we were discussing it, that
Yes.
was sure mentioned.
That was certainly
That
talked
was
about.
certainly mentioned, yeah, gravel, yeah.
Because that was one of the things that I asked about, whether it sat well with anybody else. But one of the things I asked about was when you talk about the 200 round number, and you talk about 100 and a half of that, and that's only for the lot that's going to YMCA. That still leaves another 30 something or other, round numbers, 30 left. I don't know where, some part of that is ledge, and you're gonna run right into that, but a lot of it isn't. And that adds up to a lot of money, folks. So, that's where that's when we come to the town meeting and what have you, and the percentage from the Board of Selectmen, ourselves and what have you, has to be some conversation here of what are we talking about.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, we kind of, I don't know what you're saying, is we're gonna kind of need a plan before, don't come here and expect us to make a decision without a laid out
Exactly.
plan.
That's when I'm asking about the who's counting, it's not so much who's counting.
Who's counting?
And that's between now, or whatever it is,
They're
and
gonna start within the next
Well, as soon as the frost's out, as soon as it's clear, as soon as they can get in the mud, whatever it is, they got to.
They're gonna start,
It's got to do,
they're
put
start
stripping.
clearing and stripping, right.
stripping and what have you, and they're putting their own road in, because they gotta be reasonably passable, some heavy trucks. You know, by the 15th of June, which is basically at the end of 3 months. I mean, that's a lot of stuff coming out of there really quick, and it's kinda hard to start getting our hands around this in the middle of it, when half of it's gone. And we're counting, say, we shouldn't have done it that way. We need to get a plan of attack on the whole thing, so that everybody's, the Board of Selectmen's happy, we're happy, and everybody else is reasonably pleased with it.
Well, I think what we have to do is ask them to come up with a plan. They did all the topos and everything else, so it'd be
Well,
very easy to come up with what they're gonna take out.
I'm sure Wheelabrator,
Make sure-
That's why
Rawson,
we're
and what have
doing
you,
an as-built.
that's, you know, they've got it down. But that money, and that's over, that money is going to be paid, not up front,
6 months.
6 months, in monthly installments. So, you know, so it has to
Is
come
there
to
installments? Yeah,
Sandra.
there is installments, isn't it? Yeah, there is installments.
I don't see it in my packet.
No, it isn't there. That Sandra, that money is going to go into the account Sandra's
What's
gonna
that,
hold,
on the
I guess, right?
installments?
No, on this gravel deal, I haven't seen any paperwork.
You know what, they just, they discussed it at, this last Tuesday's
Selectmen.
meeting in depth, and, you're right, we didn't see that.
That's why when you asked me that question, I
Yeah.
can't answer it. I don't have.
They had some payment plan, and they had to have it done by a certain date, and et cetera,
I
et
don't know
cetera.
what it is.
I don't either.
Well, you know what, nobody
That's
did
why I'm
ask.
mentioning it.
But you know what, he's right, nobody did ask about who was gonna be keeping track of it. Okay?
Well, some of that's, you know, I
That's a
mean,
good point.
I mean, as a point here, the why I asked the question, you know, like for the, that lot that we're going to sell for 200,000. I mean, the question that I had coming in here, I don't know who I asked that of, but I asked that of somebody who, I mean, you know, you're either going to do your due diligence or you don't.
Right.
And one of them is, how do you get a number of $209.36 or something, whatever it is, has to come from somewhere. You know, and it has to be compared with something other than saying, gee, it sounds like a good number, okay. And then tomorrow, someone says, how the hell could you sell it for, you know, something like that? And you're sitting there going, but, and, you know, and the questions that you asked with regards to the accountant, asked us some of those things in the past, which are all valid questions. That would be, in my mind, this type of question would be a valid question today. Where did the number come from? How did it get there? What are we going to do about it?
I totally agree with you.
It's not any more really complicated than that. And whatever the number is that's going to the trust, it is what it is. Yeah, whether it's
Thanks for bringing it up, because we'll get paperwork on it, I assume, by next month, so we can make some type of...
well, it depends when they're, you know, I mean, at the end, I mean, we're in March. And, you know what'll rip up the ground really quick during this period of time. And some of those loaders that Rawson has and what have you, can bring them up to Plainfield. I mean, can make some serious holes in the ground pretty quick. Motion to adjourn? Any other
no.
business? Whoops, sorry about that. Whoops.
New business.
New business. That was a new business.
Oh,
What did
I
we-
gotta ask one question, and I forgot to ask the auditor. The sewer authority is paying different people within the town, okay? And it doesn't show up within our budget. It's gonna affect the pension plan. And if they're getting paid by another entity within the town, then I would suggest that they get a W-2 from the sewer authority, because if we're getting paid into the town, it should show in our line item whatever they're getting paid extra.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Jerry Bosley, treasurer, a few other people.
Okay,
Get stipends.
now I know what you're
Okay.
talking about. Now I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Now, I don't feel that you don't get a true amount, and the town's paying the pension on these people, and the sewer authority isn't.
No, they are.
They should get a 1099 as far as I'm
What was
concerned.
that again? They are?
The pension, they're paying their share of the pension.
They were fair to share the pension.
Yeah, well, I just think that, I feel that they should get a 1099 and let them figure it out, because when you look at it, you're looking at a significant, one person's gonna make probably 15,000 more.
Let me ask the question,
retirement.
are they getting a separate, is it all the W-2, whether it be from the water and the municipal?
We get paid by the town, and we get reimbursed from the WPCA.
Do you pay him directly? In other words, this shows up in his pay thing. He gets $600 from the public works. He gets another 300. To make it simple, 300, and he actually gets 900 in his paycheck.
Right. And then we take
But it's
whatever.
one W-2.
That's correct.
Yes.
So, there'd be tax ramifications on the 1099. There's reasons.
Yeah, but
you
we're
could-
paying. I mean, that's doubling. That's almost doubling his retirement in 3 years.
Is that your point?
Not
That's my point. That's the
Your
point.
point is what? The tax implications, is that it?
Well, no, the tax implications is, the person's making that much extra money,
Yeah.
and in 3 years, he's gonna get 15,000 more in retirement. That the
Good.
town's gonna pay,
Good for him. Just like you, when you were in state police, right? I mean, all the overtime you could get, right?
yeah,
Same thing.
no, it isn't.
Nothing wrong with that. I've heard people, comment about it, and I said, I hadn't even thought about it. Somebody says, oh, you know what? They're gonna build up their retirement. I went, man, that's good. Nothing wrong with that.
I don't think that, I'm just saying that it should be a separate entity, because if you look at it, when we look at the budget, it doesn't show what he's really getting paid. I mean, in other words, actually, if you looked in the line item in the Public Works Director, he's getting 90,000, not 60,000. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't show the true figures.
Does it show it in the budget that he's getting that much? No?
Only shows in.
But we pay it separate, right?
They pay us separate.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And, you're trying to balance things out. Well, you're not balancing things out, because,
But that's all he makes from that department, and then the other people, the other budget is paying the other.
Right.
yeah, but the thing is, it doesn't show up on the, I'm not gonna discuss it. 'cause
I know when wages are calculated through
Yeah.
payroll, that some are charged off, we'll talk about my department,
Yeah.
some are charged off to the treasurer, and some are charged off to sewer, and some to water. And then quarterly, whatever was charged off, WPCA gets invoiced, and then, so the town receives that money, and it relieves that expense, so it washes out.
Okay, so does it go into, we'll say, a line item within the Public Works Department for wages? Is that how it's transferred in? I don't know, I'm just asking that question.
Like, I get a paycheck every week.
Okay,
And when I started here, I was, my salary is my salary. And part of my wages were supposed to come from the WPCA.
you know what, I'll talk to you when you get back from vacation, I mean, this is,
Yeah, I
this
think
is
just-
easier.
there's only 1, 2, 3,
There's Missy,
4.
Doug, Jerry, and
Right, 4
myself.
people. And we started in May of 2011.
Yeah.
For Doug, Paula at the time, and then Jerry.
And then this
Yeah,
is-
it was 511. I think that Jerry, his got increased in August of 2011, because I have the response to an FOI that was processed back in January of last year. That actually Jim Shaw responded to at the time. So it's right there.
Yeah, but I'm asking a question to you guys.
It's a question probably that could be addressed to the WPCA. I don't know, or the Board of Selectmen, I'm not sure. Absolutely. Yeah, you saw that, right?
They ever planned on hiring people with those positions? WPCA?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Is the WPCA ever planned on hiring people to cover those positions on their own?
Well, it turned out at the time, John, what happened is it was very difficult to get a guy that would have both sewer and water with all the licenses, and we were looking at paying somebody well over $100,000.
You're gonna pay a lot more
to
than
do the
30
job.
grand a year.
Yeah, and we just shook our head, and we ended up saving ourselves some money, quite frankly, by going ahead and sitting down with Jerry and saying, look, we don't have any idea what your job's gonna be like, but we'd like you to at least cover for a while now that Bill is gone. And he did, and after about a month or two, he said, okay, I know how to do this job. And we were also depending on Doug to do a lot of our legwork. And of course, Paul was doing all of our finances. And at that point, I don't think we had Missy on board.
No.
No, we didn't. She's handling all our collections. I mean, the job she did is, she took our collections that were up around $500,000 and brought it down to 230, somewhere around in there, so she did an outstanding job. We looked at it as temporary, John, but you know how temporary works out, right, sometimes?
Well, I think the thing is, he's got a good point.
Huh?
He's got a good point. In the sewer department, you don't need an operator, you already have
No, you
operators.
don't.
You just need an administrator.
Well, what happened was, you know, Jerry found out that the water guys know what they're doing. There's 2 guys down there, they're licensed. The sewer plant, same thing, you got 3 guys down there. There used to be 4, now there's 3. And the maintenance guys, they know what they're doing. His men out on the road, they know what they're doing. They've got a crew chief, Joey. Right? So you're right, you need an administrator. I hope that when we sit down and start talking about working on the charter, and I think we talked about this at our first meeting, you know, having a public works, I don't want to call it an engineer, but somebody that handles all of that, all right? But to answer your question, John, yeah, it was. We've been doing it for 3 years, and during those 3 years, if you talk to Jim Shaw, he'll tell you, we've accomplished a lot with a good team of people. How long will it continue? That's something I can't answer, because that, again, is a commission question. The WPCA would have to look at it. I mean, when we started, we had this big, huge project with the sewer plant, and you know, that took up a lot of time of actually Jim, okay, as the chairman, and also Doug. I don't know if I answered your question, but you know, that's.
I realize one person's gonna cost a lot, because you put, you know, individual people in that position at lower pays and still save money.
Well, the reason they,
No, we spend more.
the reason they have the various people with all the licenses, you know, when they first went out, you know, they thought, I don't know, the thinking was perhaps wasn't what it should have been, but they thought they were going to be able to hire somebody from. They wound up with an extremely, somebody who wanted certainly in the 6 figures to start running a plant, and they were talking about what they were paying the fellow before was certainly nowhere near that, not even 3/4 of that. And the reason they were doing it were for the licenses and what have you that individual had. Well, come to find out, there were other people that were working in the plants that had licenses for specialties. And that's really what you needed. You had to have someone have a license to run that pump. Couldn't run this pump, but he could run that pump. And they had somebody else with a license. And it was a question of how do you keep that all together? How do you keep it running? And they decided they needed someone for a heck of a lot less money than what that person, because people, that Jerry doesn't have those licenses, just doesn't. But he didn't need it to tell him, I need somebody to dig a hole.
The problem is when you break it up into multiple people instead of having one, you're still gonna need that one, maybe at a slightly reduced rate to oversee all those people, because they don't know what each other's doing. And the other thing is, you gotta remember with the cost of employment, if you were to get a guy, these guys average around $1.20, $1.30 a year.
Yeah.
So your total cost of employment is probably about $1.50, $1.55. So we're talking about, if you're lucky, you could probably get 3 to 4 people out of that. So you may not have everything you need in one person, and you'll still need a manager on top of that. And even if you reduce it to some extent, A, you're gonna have someone who doesn't know at least part of what they're doing, and B, you're still gonna talk about $75,000 to $90,000 for that person. So you're gonna pay more either way.
I would love to see
Yeah,
an
well-
engineer. I would love to see an engineer run
What
over.
what we are looking
That's-
at, and it's been mentioned at the meetings, it's public information, that we want to privatize the sewer plant. In other words, is that the right word?
Yes.
I'm using? Okay.
Privatize, yep.
In other words, have an outside company come in and run it.
Killenly does, doesn't he?
I'm sorry?
Killenly.
Killingly does that.
Not the water.
So, for all
No,
intents and
United Water.
purposes,
For the sewer.
the sewer, just the sewer.
You're talking about privatizing the operation.
Yeah.
Just the operation,
Just the
just the operation, and we hold everything else. Because we're gonna need a grade 4 down there, a grade 4 sewer plant operator. Those grade 4s don't come cheap. Now, if you hire, there is a company that's running the Killingley plant, and they have their 4s and their 3s and all of that, and the people that are working down there are quite happy. I mean, they're not working for the town of Killingley anymore, right?
Right.
They're working for this private company. Now you've got all this, you get the private company, just like Connecticut Water, they have their own engineering people, they have their own, they handle all their grants. To put it bluntly, at that point there, we don't need him, right?
Right.
He's smiling, but we don't need Jerry either. And if somebody handles, maybe the finances changes, you'd be surprised that Connecticut Water, now that's another example, okay, Connecticut Water also leasing our operation. Connecticut Water can come in downstairs into that office and do all of the meter reading and all of the billing for a lot less than what we pay our people. A lot less.
Well, that's the big question, is if the engineers are gonna come in and say, we'll do it all for, but we'll do it for $500,000.
So, I mean, those are ongoing things that the commission is looking at, and you know, and Jim's done just an excellent job. I've enjoyed working with Jim throughout this whole process during the last 3 years. It'll be 3 years in, I believe in March of this year, yes, it'll be 3 years in March, right?
Yeah.
He became chairman of the board, and, you know, brought his experience with Spiral, and we were thinking outside the box in a lot of things that we did. Took a big risk, was spending $18 million. It amazes him that, you know, we're spending that kind of money.
Nobody raised up.
Nobody's barking at our door. We have our WPCA meeting every month. I don't think anybody's been there other than maybe somebody complaining about their water. And we do get a few complaints about the water.
Anything else, folks?
One other thing I just want to make you aware of, which is going to be good news for the town of Putnam, the Interstate Reliability Project, which is to basically put in duplicates, transmission lines through Putnam. Well, they're starting basically down in Columbia, I think, and going all the way into Massachusetts. That project is going to start in Putnam this fall. On a rough basis, they're talking about $1 million per mile investment. So let's say there's five miles in the town of Putnam, that's $5 million. I asked Randy what that would mean in terms of grand list. She was thinking that would be about $300,000 extra dollars a year based on the improvements to the
You can use that on the Board of Finance. Well said.
But, you know, as we go forward in terms, and with Delphi here, she'll tell you about all the improvements that, you know, that are coming up in terms of businesses that are expanding and fostered by this property. So in terms of grand list growth, and it's going to be the variety of the commercial and industrial side as opposed to the residential, we're seeing some good trends in the next years.
We're gonna need it. It's coming down the pipe.
Okay, motion adjourned.
I'm just gonna clarify with regard to the finance office and the WPCA. When I was hired to help them with their budget, and I reconcile their bank accounts. I can't and don't have the resources in my office to get into much more than that. I would love to, but I'm only one person.
Well, hopefully we will.
I know, but they could use a full-time accountant.
All right, motion adjourned.
Motion. Second.
Second thing. Good night.